Uh, uh, hello there.
But it's Gandalf. Hello there.
Hello there, guys, gals, and non binary pals, and welcome back to Tome Raider. It's been a month since the last one. Uh,
Who can believe it?
yep,
Well,
things.
us, obviously.
Yeah, life kept getting in the way. Has it been. Yeah, 1 month ago today we were in Nottingham.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Oh, how things change. We're
yeah.
nerding out and spending far too much money. This
Whereas
is the way.
this is the way, whereas now we're nerding out and have no money.
Yes. This is the result.
This is the result. Uh, uh, I spent £20 on a D20.
Yeah,
25
I
was,
also. I did exactly the same.
to be fair, it was a pretty cool D20.
Yeah.
Uh,
Words, have you lost yours already?
no, no, no. I do think I might have chipped the plastic a tiny bit though, because I have a hardwood floor that I dropped it on, which is unfortunate, but it still rolls. Yeah,
Oh dear, oh dear.
yeah. Okay, let's just get the Twitch thing up so that I can make sure there is no audio issue. I don't know why there would be one.
No, I believe the word you're looking for is technology.
Yeah, like I can hear everything, by the way, everything now that works well. But this Tuesday for Tombury Tuesday, I was um I mean I had to kill the stream almost towards the end because there was some sort of driver failure and my capture card just wouldn't work after that. Despite restarts and everything, and then a specific combination of disabling device manager, restart, then re-enabling device manager did seem to fix it. But it's like just that's just the level of how arbitrary technology working and not working seems to be.
Yes, it is.
Like
Uh,
it's always some version of turn it off and on again. Unless that doesn't fix it, in which case you need a new one. Uh,
yeah,
and I could not afford a new capture card, so I'm very glad it didn't get to that point. Uh,
yeah.
anyway, so when we last left off, we took far too long to finish discussing Silver Blaze. The
Yes, we took what 2 hours to discuss a story. That's audiobook is 53 minutes at one time speed.
I mean, I can
So we
get through
spent
all
over
three
twice.
of them in that time.
Yeah, yeah. So we went into a lot of detail
Yeah,
about just trying to describe the story.
yeah. We are prone to tangents on this show. We should warn you in advance. uh, but
Yeah.
now, this second story, The Inventor of the Cardboard Box, I do have to say it does stand out among the three. And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, the three stories that we were going to do last month, but we only did one of, I was saying at the time, do carry a theme of betrayal. Or,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
a theme of betrayal of trust in several different ways. Which I thought was interesting given that Arthur Conan Doyle didn't intend for these to be read and discussed in groups of three, I'm sure. I mean, I would ask him if I could. But and
Yes.
yet the
It
theme
seems
emerged.
unlikely. Yes. Yes. as a curious, as a sort of curio attached to this story, because of one of the events in it, it was considered so scandalous that it wasn't actually included with the original printing of the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes,
Yeah, the
even though this is where it is, the release order.
yeah. Yeah, the book I'm reading that I read along with doesn't have this where it would otherwise be. It has it near the end with oh, I forget what the book is called. That this story is in the big, like the big hardback that I've got.
Yeah, but yeah, it was considered so scandalous that its printing outside of the magazine, the original magazine, was delayed into the greater volumes. And for something which nowadays features in so, so, so many TV programs, it is unreal.
Yeah.
Indeed, it is also the premise of entire series. He said,
The thing he's talking about is
yeah,
adultery. That's what
yeah,
the crux of. Well, we just spoilt the story there, but uh, I mean, in our defense, how long ago did it come out?
130-ish years. So yeah, I think we're past the point of needing to put spoiler warnings on it.
Yeah.
If you've not read it and decided to tune into a channel reviewing the stories, well, that's your own failure of common sense right there.
uh, that having been said, I keep wanting to say The Legend of the Cardboard Box, but that just seems like more of a Metal Gear fanfic title.
Yes, it is. The greatest agent they ever had, Agent Cardboard Box. Yeah.
In
Yeah, the
choosing
box gets all the credit.
yeah. Now, Watson opens
Sorry.
this story. He acknowledges that he has been trying his best to curate the stories he writes with the ones that best showcase his talents with minimal sensationalism. Which is, like, as he established in an earlier story, how Sherlock prefers it. Yeah.
Yeah. Though Sherlock still accuses him of making them sensational anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only way that they wouldn't have the sensational sort of accusation is if Sherlock actually bothered to write them himself.
Yeah.
They'd also probably be a lot more dull.
He
And
says
then
this.
again, that might have actually worked out for Arthur Conan Doyle. He could have actually worked on the other stories that he thought were his better works, reportedly.
Yeah. He is not famous for being especially proud of Sherlock Holmes of all, for some reason, but Watson does admit it is, however, unfortunately impossible entirely to separate the sensational from the criminal. And a chronicle is left in the dilemma that he must either sacrifice details which are essential to his statements and so give a false impression of the problem, or he must use matter which chance and not choice has provided him with. Now, I'm not sure what he means by that. Chance and not choice.
Yeah. I suppose that's a way of saying, or you must use information and stuff in which come to him in a more sensational manner, as in, haha, by chance we have discovered this, rather than through deduction we have found this.
Yeah. And
that's my reading of it.
Yeah. And this is relatable. It was a blazing hot day in August. Baker Street was like an oven.
British architecture, not designed for summer. Yeah.
And just gonna mention, I've seen many TikToks of Americans apologizing for assuming they could handle British summer. So before you say anything, you know.
Yeah. Well, is It's because, sure, it gets hotter in America. They also measure it in Fahrenheit and think we're also measuring it in Fahrenheit, a number of them. Not all, just a large number who do the complaining, thing that I've seen anyway, is like, yes, you also live in a country that is air conditioned. We do not.
Yeah.
We live in a country built for 8 months of winter, followed by the remaining 4 months of winter.
With a week of summer, like, somewhere in there.
Scattered across the 4 months of winter that follow the original 8.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you get an extra week of summer all at once.
Yes. Like the last week.
Yeah.
But,
there have been worse heat
yeah.
waves, but I've... yeah.
But, yes, they're lounging about, blinds half drawn. Watson is unbothered by it because of his time in India, so he is used to these temperatures.
Yep.
As he says, thermometer at 90 was no hardship. Holmes lays curled upon the sofa, and all I could think of was Holmes curled up like a cat with that phrase.
Yeah.
Just there, always batting the letter he's reading back and forth between his hands. And it's like a cat with a ball of string.
And then he reads Watson's mind.
Yes. Yeah. After Watson laments that he'd rather be in the countryside at this, but his bank balance isn't good enough to take a holiday. And he comments that Sherlock would rather be surrounded by 5 million potential criminals than just spend any time in the countryside.
Yeah.
Though I do believe this is also the first time we get a mention of Holmes having a brother. Turned his mind from the evildoers of the town to track down his brother of the country. Not named, but is the first mention of Mycroft.
No, I don't think that's what that means. I think he's referring to the evildoers of the country as the brother of the evildoers of the town.
Okay.
So, not just yet, although that was momentarily quite exciting.
Yeah, though Mycroft is also noted as having as being of the more country of the two of them as well.
Yeah.
And also lazy. But yes, but yes, Sherlock does read Watson's mind, and Watson agreed, and then sort of wait. So like Watson agrees to the point Sherlock makes. And, wait, what? How did you know what I was thinking?
Yeah. He says, you're right, Watson, said he. It does seem a most preposterous way of settling a dispute. Most preposterous, I exclaimed, and suddenly realizing how he had echoed the inmost thoughts of my soul, I sat up in my chair and stared at him in blank amazement.
Yes. Yes, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. And Holmes just laughs. I remember that some time ago when I read you the passage in one of Poe's sketches in which a close reasoner follows the unspoken thoughts of his companion, you were inclined to treat the matter as a tour de force of the author. On my remarking that I was constantly in the habit of doing the same, you expressed incredulity.
Yeah. And he said, okay, but that's not... He implies that that's not the same as what he just did. And Holmes tells him that after throwing down his paper, which was the action that got his attention, he said, you sat for half a minute with a vacant expression, then your eyes fixed themselves upon your newly framed picture of General Gordon, and I saw by the alteration in your face that a train of thought had been started, but it did not lead very far. And he just sort of dissects what he's doing with his face to tell what he's thinking.
Yeah, which it takes it all through various sort of bits of unframed portrait of Henry Ward Beecher that sits on top of the books that would fill in a nice empty spot they have in the room, and also reflect off of General Gordon. Uh, and then sort of the nature of the Civil War as well. Oh, and how the North were underkind to Beecher at the time of the Civil War, and his previous indignation at the behaviour of the Northmen, who they refer to as the more turbulent of our people.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Watson is impressed. He said, and now that you've explained it, I confess that I am as amazed as before. And he says, he basically says it was nothing, and presents him with the problem of the week.
Yes. Which is just like that made
Criminal problem
more
of the week.
I had the exact same sort of thing going through my head, but no, I must resist. Seb isn't here yet. Yeah. But yes, there is a short bit in the paper in which Watson had lamented that there was nothing of interest in it earlier. Parliament had risen, everyone had sodded off. Nothing particularly interesting happening. But lo and behold, he had missed this small thing, for which Sherlock had received a separate message for. And the passage is called A Gruesome Packet. Miss Susan Cushing, living at Cross Street, Croydon, has been made the victim of what must be regarded as a particularly revolting practical joke, unless some more sinister meaning should prove to be attached to the incident. At 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon, a small package wrapped in brown paper was handed in by the postman. A cardboard box was inside, which was filled with coarse salt. On emptying this, Miss Cushing was horrified to find 2 human ears, apparently quite freshly severed. The box had been sent by parcel post from Belfast upon the morning before. There is no indication as to the sender, and the matter is the more mysterious as Miss Cushing, who is a maiden lady of 50. I don't know why I said maiden lady like that, but maiden lady of 50 has led a most retired life and has so few acquaintances or correspondence that it is a rare event for her to receive anything through the post. Some years ago, however, when she resided at Penge, she let apartments in a house to 3 young medical students whom she was obliged to get rid of on account of their noisy and irregular habits, aka students.
Yeah.
The police are of opinion that this outrage has been perpetrated. Yeah, we know those noisy and irregular habits.
We know of where we speak.
Yeah, we still seem to suffer from the irregular habits of what is sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the police are of the opinion that this outrage may have been perpetrated upon Miss Cushing by these youths who owed her a grudge and who hoped to frighten her by sending her these relics of the dissecting rooms. Some probability is lent to the theory by the fact that one of these students came from the north of Ireland and, to the best of Miss Cushing's belief, from Belfast. In the meantime, the matter is being actively investigated. Mr. Lestrade, one of our very smartest of our detective officers, being in charge of the case.
Which is,
and you can almost hear Sherlock's reaction to that, even though it isn't in the text. Oh, Lestrade, one of our very smartest officers, is on the case.
While accurate, it is more a damning indictment than a reassurance, must be what Sherlock is thinking.
Yes. Yes. It's also amusing to see the ancestor of someone who would go on to play Sherlock Holmes has appeared in the story, a Miss Cushing.
Yeah.
Because, of course, Peter Cushing was Sherlock at one point.
He was.
There is no actual relation. This Miss Cushing is A, fictional, and B, childless in her 50s, so unlikely to suddenly become a mother.
Though not impossible.
Yeah, just unlikely. Yeah. Yeah, but I couldn't resist making the comment.
Yeah.
But yes, Sherlock then reveals the letter he's been reading and rereading while curled up like a cat. has been a note from Lestrade, essentially asking for help.
Yeah.
Uh, though Lestrade has a lot more information in these notes than he normally does. He's evidently got to the point where I don't want Sherlock to go facts, give me facts and data.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he makes sure to get them.
yeah. They say they're having a little difficulty in getting anything to work in terms of what is going on with the case, and as for the help, nonetheless, we have of course wired to the Belfast post office, but a large number of parcels were handed in upon that day, so they have no means of identifying this particular one or of remembering the sender. The box is a half-pound of honeydew tobacco and does not help us in any way. Medical student theory still appears to be the most feasible, but if you should have a few hours to spare, I would be very happy to see you out here. I shall either be at the house or the police station all day. And what's it? I was like, what do you say you want? Fancy showing up the police force once again? It's not quite like that. Can you rise superior to the heat and run down to Corridon with me on the off chance of a case for your annals?
Yeah.
Which is,
But no, you're.
add my ego again.
Yeah, that's an accurate assessment. I mean, he does clearly find some fun in showing up the police.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the Benedict Cumberbatch levels of viciousness about it, but, you know, this is clearly fun for him on some level.
I think it's only a sort of he finds enjoyment in showing up the police because of the wonder that Watson has for his showing up of the police.
Yeah.
Because before it's sort of really implied that he didn't really interact with the police at all. It was just only had enjoyment in work itself. But now he has another outlet for the fluffing of his ego,
which
isn't the only reason he does it. It is still the work is almost the most important reason, but
it does remind me, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, of a deleted scene of an early Matt Smith Doctor Who episode where he tells Amy Pond the reason he has companions is because he can't see the wonder of the universe anymore on his own. Because if I see a star, he says, I know how it came in, I know how it went out, and I was probably there both times. But you see it. The wonder of the universe, he means. And he goes, so when you see it, I see it. And I think maybe a similar thing is going on.
Yeah. Like, quite possibly.
Yeah, like, he, through Watson's enthusiasm, he recovers some of his own that might have been lost to, the acclimatization to what it is he can do.
Yeah. But they make their way to Croydon and are relieved that it is A, cooler, and B, there was a spot of rain while they were on the train. And Holmes had sent forth a wire beforehand to let Lestrade know they were on their way. So Lestrade, who they describe as wiry, as dapper, and as ferret as ever. So that he is waiting for the best.
You broke up there. What was the last adjective?
As ferret-like as ever.
Yes, I thought that was what it was.
Yeah.
But I didn't get it, so I was thinking maybe the stream didn't either.
Yeah. But he's waiting for them at the station, and he leads them to Miss Cushing's residence, which is only a 5-minute walk from the station, which is convenient. Normally they have to get a carriage.
Yeah.
But they described the house and it's small, neat, prim and proper, sort of kept there with a couple of ladies working for them. It seems, and that's sort of the street as a whole.
Yeah.
Oh, and Miss Cushing is able to keep a servant girl because, of course, they are. Of course, they are because no crime perpetrated upon any one of these stories is ever done to the poor. Or so it seems.
Yeah.
And they are taken in to see Miss Cushing in yes, and she is not happy with the situation, perhaps unsurprisingly, given that she has just been sent a pair of severed ears in the post. And she must have been excited because she so rarely receives packages, and there's just salt ears, ew.
Although,
Yeah,
whether or not she knows why, I mean, she seems not to here. But I,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I think it's implied throughout that she doesn't know why the ears have been sent there,
which
and
is a curious anticlimax. Well, not an anticlimax, but it would have been to the perpetrator, and is like Sherlock Holmes spots something that only Sherlock Holmes would, and that's that her. And he describes the human ear. Basically, he implies that the ear is as distinctive as a fingerprint, and no two are alike. But he notices that her ear is identical to the one in the box. So the ear in the box belongs to a blood relation. And I gotta, this is probably one of the most straightforward cases we've had so far in Sherlock Holmes.
yeah,
But
yeah, and
so he figures it out
there
very
is
quickly.
yeah, there is some truth to the uniqueness of their ears and comparing it to the uniqueness of fingerprints. It's just not accepted in courts because so much because realistically, how many times are you going to catch a criminal by their ear print?
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
no.
We found the criminal's ear print on the victim's backside. I don't know why the backside, but yes, that's where it was.
But in order to impress an ear print, you would have to press your ear against a surface quite hard for some time.
Yeah, yeah. Realistically, it'd be the oils that are on the skin just coming off onto a surface in the shape of your ear.
Yeah.
That would do it. But that is not actually relevant to the story, ear prints. But ear shapes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miss Cushing, Miss Susan Cushing, wants the ears taken away and they are in the outhouse. Which I believe in this context is not referring to an outside toilet, but is actually referring closer to a shed.
Ah.
Ed.
I always pictured an outside toilet when I read that bit.
Yeah, I'm guessing that mainly from the context that they all stand in there and Sherlock examines the ears in there.
Yeah.
From how I read it, so it seems less likely to be a toilet.
It would make more sense if it were a shed.
Yeah. But Lestrade has said that he's only kept them here so Mr. Holmes can examine them in her presence. And why in my presence, sir? In case he wished to ask any questions. What is the use of asking me questions when I tell you I know nothing whatever about it? And Holmes is actually coming in and being soothing, which again goes against the meta image of Sherlock Holmes as uncaring and of social norms and politeness.
Yeah, I think we've pretty thoroughly disregarded that image of him so far in this reading, but yeah.
Yeah.
He's a very compassionate man. He's just also...
Unless you work for Scotland Yard.
Unless you work for Scotland Yard, in which case you are dirt to him.
Yeah. Okay, we've probably bigged that up a bit since sort of but the meta, that is also true to the meta image of he doesn't actually like a lot of the police officers he works with. The main exception to that is actually in Elementary, where Sherlock actually uh, the respect of Captain Gregson and Marcus Bell, Detective Bell, are actually quite important to him and mean a lot to him. Which is very different to how Gregson is portrayed in the one story so far, where Holmes is just sort of like, "Oh yeah, so I just use him and Lestrade to wind each other up and to help me look even smarter." Well, not quite, but occasionally they will provide a piece of information that will help me get to the solution quicker.
Yeah. But he doesn't need help here. As soon as he saw that ear, he knew exactly what happened. Like,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. He tries to calm Miss Cushing, and she would she sort of responds to his comments of I have no doubt that you have been annoyed more than enough already over this business. Indeed, I have, sir. I am a quiet woman and lived a retired life. It is something new for me to see my name in the papers and to find the police in my home. I won't have those things in here, Mr. Lestrade. If you wish to see them, you must go to the outhouse. I say from clues, the next line is, "It was a small shed in the narrow garden." And
I've
yeah,
read this.
they
I've read the same story you have, and for some reason, I still keep picturing like at the beginning of Shrek, like that little cubicle.
yeah. Yes. But the cardboard box, the yellow cardboard box is brought out with a piece of brown paper and some string. And they sit at the bench at the end of the pass while Holmes examines everything. And Holmes is like, "Oh, the string is exceedingly interesting. What do you make of the string, Lestrade?" Just sort of like, "Come on, I will eventually ferret a useful answer out of you. Come
Yeah.
on, get the clue, get the clue."
Ironic that you
The
said
string is,
ferret.
yes, I didn't consciously do that, but here we are. As a sort of like, it's a piece of tarred twine, and Miss Cushing has cut it, which has left the knot intact, which is of great importance to Sherlock, and Lestrade cannot see why it would be of any importance.
As is usually the case.
Yeah, Lestrade's sort of level of importance of the knot is it's very neatly tied. I have made a note of that. Whereas Sherlock has already deduced half of the identity of whoever the culprit is from that knot, as will be shown later on.
Yep.
And he comments, "Brown paper with a distinctive smell of coffee," and evidently Lestrade reacts in some way to suggest that he hadn't noticed the smell of coffee. Because Holmes is like, "What? Did you not observe it? I think there can be no doubt of it."
Yep.
Dragon characters, and Holmes identifies the pen and the quality of the ink based upon the writing, and also a bit about the character of the person who wrote it is probably a man of limited education and unacquainted with the town of Croydon, because it's spelled Croydon with an I, not a Y.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the box is unremarkable apart from, two thumbprints in the bottom corner, which, that would be enough today to not need Sherlock Holmes brought in. Ah, two thumbprints, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it comments that the salt is of the quality used for preserving hides and and others of the coarser commercial processes. Which I'm not entirely sure what he means by that, but quite possibly stuff for like taxidermy and that are also utilised for it. So it's a preservative, as salt is. And yeah, Sherlock then goes to actually examining the ears on the board across his knees. Uh, and Lestrade and Watson are both sort of leaning in either side of him to observe him at work. And Holmes is like, "You have observed, of course, that these ears are not a pair." And in a moment where you almost expect Lestrade to go, "No, I hadn't," he's like, "Yes, I had noticed that."
Ah.
Yeah, but Lestrade still seems set on the dissecting room practical joke. But Holmes is like, no, it's not a practical joke. Are you sure? The presumption is strongly against it.
It is neither a joke nor, strictly speaking, is it particularly practical.
Yeah, and also it's sort of like the evidence he points out is like there's no sign of a preservative fluid having been used on the ear, which is what dissecting room bodies would have had done to them. There's no the sign of the cut shows a more blunt instrument than you would get from a dissecting room again, and the use of salt as well. It's not it's not what a medical student would go for to preserve a body part.
No.
But there is no practical joke here. Yeah, but we are investigating a serious crime. Dun dun dun.
So Sherlock goes back in to see Miss Cushing, asks her a few more questions, and asks about siblings. And she's told she has two, one of which she has lost touch with. So they go to another house and ask to see. Well, that's the gist of what he's saying. I'm glossing over a bit. But they go to another house and ask to see Miss Sarah Cushing and are denied. Which is all Sherlock needs.
By her denied by her doctor. That's the important part. Because Miss Cushing has suddenly, within the last day, taken extremely ill. And it's just sort of like a case of her nerves or something. There you go. And it happened around the same time that news of the package broke the paper. Broke in the papers,
my God.
not broke the paper.
There were 3 sisters and the package arrived with the wrong one. I only just got that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Gonti.
How many times have I gone through this damn story? Maybe I should slow down the audiobooks a bit.
Yes, maybe. Because because it suggests to Mrs. S. Cushing. Now, 2 of the sisters are Susan and Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, and at the time that the man who sent the package was aware, as far as he was aware, Sarah was still living with Susan because she did live there for a time. But Susan kicked Sarah out because bad habits and such.
Yeah.
And indeed, Sarah used to live up with her other sister, whose name currently eludes me, who was married, and she was meant to be visiting for like a week and then sort of moved in a bit and started causing trouble. Oh, and yeah. They also introduced that
Mary was the other one. Mary.
Mary. Yeah. So yeah. I've just found the line of what the illness is that Sarah is supposedly suffering from. She has been suffering since yesterday from brain symptoms of great severity. Yes, brain symptoms. What we'd call mental health nowadays,
Which,
I
you
would
know,
imagine.
which if you think about it, is not much more like. I mean, it's kind of damning how little mental health understanding has evolved since then, because we're still calling it just mental health. If you went to the doctors and he said you had a physical health problem, you'd say, "Well, no shit, Sherlock."
Yes, the constipated the constipated detective, the no shit Sherlock.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Yeah, oh, sorry, I couldn't resist.
no apology
I,
needed, mate.
I've had that one stuck in my head for about 3 weeks.
uh,
Yeah, but they've recommended that Miss Sarah Cushing take 10 days of rest, which frankly, if every time I had one of my anxiety symptoms flare up and I got 10 days of medical leave, I would have never been at work.
yeah,
Not because I would have been taking it, but just because of that is actually a vicious cycle. It's just sort of like going back in would induce anxiety. It's just like, oh, 10 days off for you. Like, no, it just goes round and round in circles.
yeah,
Yeah, but after Sherlock is denied access of seeing uh, Miss Sarah Cushing, he's like, oh, no, I've got everything I need. Here's the name. You cannot effect an arrest until tomorrow night at the earliest. I should prefer that you do not mention my name. Correlation with this case, I choose to only associate with those crimes which present some difficulty in their solution. Come on, Watson.
So that's
Yeah, and
for those who are unfamiliar with the Sherlockian dialogues of conversation. What Sherlock said was, "That was a piece of piss. I don't even want my name anywhere near it."
but Lestrade gets another case that the public assume is actually hard to his credit.
Yeah,
It's because Sherlock is on the back of one of his. They call them visitor cards. We'd think of them as business cards nowadays.
yeah,
Hayes has scribbled down a few words on the back of one of those and given it to Lestrade. Basically, the name and, as it turns out, the boat that the suspect is going to be arriving on the morrow. Because the husband of Mary is a sailor, and that is also why the knot was important. But yeah, so they then cut down to Baker Street, where Sherlock then decides to actually, fill Watson in on the case and on everything.
it was
And
murder.
it's just all, yeah. I've written to Lestrade asking to supply us with the details that we are now wanting. It's like, I got enough to solve the case. I just want all the particulars as an information. And yeah, is because at this point, Sherlock has only identified one of the victims, the sister Mary. He doesn't actually know who the other ear belongs to. Who at this point, but yeah, so he wants that information off of Lestrade. But Watson has managed to put together enough information to identify who it is that Sherlock. He believes that Sherlock thinks the suspect is, whereas of course it is actually who Sherlock knows the murderer is.
Yeah,
And it is the husband of Mary, who is a Jim Browner, the steward of a Liverpool boat. Yes, and Watson goes, "Yes, I cannot see anything, any very vague indications." And Sherlock goes, "Ah,
All
let me
right.
run over the print, perhaps."
Let me break it down for you.
Yeah, yes. What did we see first? A very placid and respectable lady who seemed quite innocent of any secret, and a portrait which showed me that she had two younger sisters. Instantly flashed across my mind that the box might have been meant for one of these. I set the idea aside as one which could be disproven or confirmed at our leisure. Went to the garden and we examined the singular contents of the little yellow box. String was a quality used by sailmakers aboard boats, and at once a whiff of the sea was perceptible in our investigations, if not on the twine. It feels it should have said. And then the knot was one popular with sailors, and a parcel was posted at a port. And the male ear was pierced for an earring, which is more common amongst sailors than landsmen.
Yeah.
And so it was like, yes, so this tragedy was perpetrated or to be found amongst the seafaring classes, which, depending on your role in the seafaring classes, means either the social elite, say an admiral or a sufficiently high-ranked captain, or the absolute dregs of society, everyone else. Unfortunately. Yeah. Next, I observed that the package was addressed to Mrs. S. Cushing. Now, the older sister would, of course, be Miss Cushing, and her initial was S. Yes, but he reasoned that the initial might belong to the others. And lo and behold, it did. Yeah, and it was just like, oh, now that narrows the field immediately. Evidently, it went to the wrong sister. Yeah, and this is where he goes into his bit about how ears are so unique, and indeed that he is written two short monographs on the subject himself. That on the nature of the ear being unique. Because of course he has, because this man has always written a monograph or two on some obscure subject that his deductions rely upon. It's always like, is there any expert literature on the subject? Yes, I refer you to these articles, but you are the author, and I am the expert on the subject. Now shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and
sorry,
he concluded that it was essentially the same ear, so therefore would be one of her sisters.
Yeah. And of course, he gets all the details of the case in a package later from Lestrade with a typewritten confession by the perpetrator. And, like, it's almost kind of like a dark mirror of the Jefferson Hope thing.
Yeah.
Because obviously much shorter.
Yeah, because the long and the short of it is, when Sarah went up to visit Mary and essentially moved in, it seemed that she had designs on trying to seduce Mary's husband. And then when he rebuffed her, she then seemed to start working her way on ruining Mary's marriage by
poisoning her against
Mary,
him, basically.
Yeah, and helping Mary start an affair by the looks of it. And the husband had essentially supposedly frightened off the love rival and, in theory, cowed, quote unquote, the what was going on with Mary, but he went for one of his trips, which I saw it a second ago on the stops, is Belfast, Dublin, and Waterford from Liverpool. The ship is also called the Mayday, and take round voyage of 7 days, so they could work out from there when he'd arrive. But uh, he was delayed. The Mayday was delayed by 12 hours because of additional cargo being loaded, or something like that. And he went back to surprise his wife. And while he was walking back to his house, he saw a carriage go past of his wife and the gentleman he thought he'd scared off. So he followed them, and they went for a little bit of rowing upon a lake or a reservoir or whatever in the local area. Pond, I think was the word they used.
Yeah.
But because of the heat, the haze, and the great mist had filled up, and he followed them along, and he just lost it when he came upon them, and he beat them to death
With an oar, I believe.
Yeah, for the description of it, he just caved the man's head in a single blow with an oar, and then he beat them to death, and then cut off the ears to send to Sarah to show, look what ruin you have wrought. He then, being a sailor and knowing boats, tied them to the boat, and then destroyed a suitable plank that would cause it to sink quickly and quietly. And then made his way back, and then posted the package in Dublin after putting it together upon the ship. But he confesses all of this because he feels he is being punished enough because he cannot sleep, and every time he closes his eyes, he sees one or both of their faces just before he killed them.
As the direct quote is, I killed them quick, but they're killing me slow.
Yeah, he is being haunted. He's always saying, like, I'm confessing, please give me the noose.
Yeah, you'd be doing me a favour.
Yeah, I think very much that would have probably been the end result of that.
Yeah.
For people. Well, he also begs not to be left alone in a cell overnight because he will be haunted. So there's a fair chance that, like Jefferson Hope, he doesn't actually make it to court because his heart gives out. But for this case, it's not because he has an arrhythmia that's so powerful that Watson can notice. He has an arrhythmia that's so bad that Watson can notice it by laying the hand on the chest.
Yeah. Although,
yeah,
you mentioned this being more sensational than the other. It's a lot darker than most stories as well, isn't it? And I say that in full knowledge that we've had, like, a giant coin minting press threatened to crush a man, and when he got away, someone chopped his thumb off. Like, you know.
Yeah.
There's something altogether more unsettling about how personal the grudge is.
Yes, and also we've had, like, daughter locked into a wing so that she can't marry and leave and take the money with her. A daughter tricked by a stepfather pretending to be a potential husband so that she wouldn't marry and take the money away. There are a surprising number of stories of parents who will go to some length to make sure their daughter does not take the dowry.
Yeah.
There were 3 of them in the last collection of 12 stories. Possibly 4, actually, it might be. Yeah, this one does seem darker, and the reason given as to why it was released later is because of the adultery. Not because of the brutal murder of the adulterers, but the fact that there was adultery full stop. Which, to our sensibilities nowadays, is not really anything. I mean, look at several prime ministers and presidents.
Yeah.
and in recent history, it's almost become expected of people in higher classes and with power, or people in general, to
Yeah.
have affairs at some point in their life.
For a story to be, yeah, given that, for a story to be held from release because of the inclusion of adultery as part of the subject matter feels kind of. I'm never sure if I'm using this word right, but it feels kind of quaint, doesn't it?
Yes, my how society changes. If
Yeah.
if stories are to be sort of delayed or could be denied publishing because of affairs, there'd be entire authors who never got published.
Yeah.
There'd, there'd be huge swathes of Mills and Boon's romances that would be gone.
Ah,
There'd still probably be well over half of the Mills and Boon's romances still available, but there'd be a large number suddenly gone. In Wuthering Heights would have been in trouble because
yeah.
it had implied adultery. It never sort of suggested it actually happened, but it implied it could be happening.
Yeah.
That also had that animal torture and murder in it, so yeah,
Mm. Yeah,
yeah,
but
it's
it is
adultery
interesting
that
that that is the sticking point and not the unusually, like, the unusually visceral anger or brutal murder that accompanies it. Like,
yeah, yeah, the actual bloody murder, someone actually getting killed,
yeah. Like, the
and we
description
actually
of this one felt a lot more vivid than. Maybe it's because the person who did it describes the process of doing it, which I guess is unusual. But,
yeah, because admittedly, for a lot of them, they are just sort of like, it's poison or I shot them. But this one, it's no, I caved their heads in and cut off their ear.
I caved their heads in with an oar, cut off their ears, and sent them to the wrong sister.
But to my knowledge, it was to the right address before that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So it is an interesting story. It is a bit of a darker one.
Yeah.
But in both subject matter and descriptive.
Yeah. But
And then again, this has sort of come after a piece where we've had several stories where there has been no murder. Because Silver Blaze, even though a man died, it was an accident.
and also the horse
And
was protecting itself.
yeah, and the incompetence of a bad man getting his own head caved in.
Yeah.
Which, that is a strange sentence, I will be honest. The incompetence of a bad man getting his head caved in. But, yeah, but there's been so many sort of kidnappings, really, or vanishing marriage prospects, or vanishing bride as well. The case of the noble bachelor.
Yeah.
Uh,
And it's
is it? It's just sort of like there's been a lot going on since we've actually had a cold-blooded murder,
yeah.
as it were.
And as I said at the top of the episode, there's been a prevailing theme between the last story, this one, and the next one of a betrayal of trust. And you don't get like well, you don't get as complete a betrayal of trust quite as you do with adultery, I suppose.
Yeah, because the first one was a betrayal of trust between employer and employee, which, in many ways, is probably the least of the betrayals of trust that we have in this one.
Yeah,
But it is also the one most harshly punished.
it
In
is.
many ways,
It is.
because he gets his head caved in by a horse,
Yeah.
which
I mean, at
yeah,
least it was quick.
yeah.
And then, granted, the two adulterers get killed as well, but and that is also described as quick as well, but as sort of like harshness of punishment to level of betrayal, it doesn't feel as large of a gap between um, employer and killed to scorned husband and killed. Not that we're saying that those who have been cheated on should go out and murder those who cheated on them.
No, no, no.
That is not the message to take away from what I'm saying.
We're just recognizing that that's a really shitty thing to have happen to you. So his reaction, while extreme, I mean, I'm not even
doesn't
gonna
seem as extreme.
Yeah.
Comparatively.
Yeah. And well, there's also the fact that like the mistrust that was placed in him by his wife wasn't earned. It was put there on purpose by his sister-in-law. And it's like,
yeah, it seems like she was trying to split them up so she could get the husband, or splitting them up because the husband stayed true. Who is just sort of like, well, I'm a spiteful witch.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. One thing about the husband that was to be of note, his rage was increased because he had stopped drinking, but then, thanks to Sarah's meddling and the whole situation, he lost his blue ribbon, as they called it, which is a certain period sober. I don't know offhand.
Yeah.
And so he had gone back to drink, and it had made him more volatile.
Yeah.
But he had managed to give up drinking for Mary when they got married. So Sarah is really sort of coming out as a bit of a villain.
Yeah.
Yes, in a very different way to the husband.
Yeah.
But in some ways it could be argued worse because it is because of her that the husband became a killer. But it's hard to just blame her because the husband still went out and killed them. It's not like Sarah deliberately prodded him to go and follow them and find out and to kill them. So the one who received the ears is perhaps the most innocent party in the entire Blummin story.
Yeah, she knows nothing about it. She actually doesn't.
Yeah. And she's going to be horrified in the morning paper to read that one of the ears was her sister who was dead.
Yeah. The story cuts out before that happens. Perhaps mercifully.
Yeah. Sherlock, I think, does a bit of lamenting about the circle of misery and violence and fear.
Well, he says directly, "What is the meaning of it, Watson? What object is served by this circle of misery and violence and fear? It must tend to some end, or else our universe is ruled by chance, which is unthinkable. But what end?" And I think that is very much of the time, because, well, the meta image of Sherlock Holmes is that he is completely convinced that the universe is ruled by chance.
Yeah. It's a bit of the optimist within Sherlock that the original stories have, that the meta image has sort of abandoned.
Yeah. And, at the time it was Victorian England, you would probably expect someone to, on some level, believe in God.
Yeah. Faith was not as important, but you could still, not get a job for being the wrong kind of Christian.
Yeah.
And
So like it was expected that you would be. It was expected that you would be Christian and you would believe in God at the time, though, wasn't it?
yeah, or you would be foreign and believe in someone else,
Yeah.
even if it was one of the Abrahamic religions, and who believe extensively the same God and have a lot of the same scriptures as across them, and just add a bit more whenever a new one is made. So Judaism got an addition and became Christianity. Christianity got an addition and became Islam. The Mormons supposedly found gold sheaves written by Christ under a tree in America after when he went to visit there between rising from the dead and actually ascending to heaven, which is also the time period he supposedly went to Glastonbury and Japan. Yeah, no, in between rising from the dead and actually finally ascending to heaven, and which, going by the actual Bible stories, is about 2 days. He visited all three and spent a long time carving golden sheets to. No, the golden sheets were made by a Jewish splinter group, I believe. No, I can't remember where the golden sheets of the Book of the Mormons are supposed to come from offhand. Disregard everything as being inaccurate of what I've said about them, but apparently Jesus went to America, went to England, and went to Japan in between rising and ascending, which is indeed part of the what Jerusalem is singing about.
Yeah.
In Jerusalem, where he came to England with Joseph of Arimathea. The only thing we know about Arimathea is that Joseph is from there. That is literally the only mention of it in the Bible or anywhere else. Yes, but that was a bit of a sidetrack there. Possibly would have been more useful to bring that one up and study in Scarlet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bonus content there for episode 1.
Yeah. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. No, wait. No, not that one. Episode 1, Pilot. To see if this works. Yeah. But, yeah, I think this was a time in which people wanted their literary characters to be more hopeful, because there was also probably a certain air of hope and smug self-satisfaction and superiority, because this was A, the Great Binge, and B, Victorian England, about the time where Britain was at its most powerful.
Yeah.
And it probably looked like to some that it was only a matter of time before we conquered all the other empires and just the world became the British Empire.
God, that's an alternate history that doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
No, I mean, frankly, the history that we got of it doesn't bear thinking about, but we need to learn the lessons from it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we get
Seb is here.
Seem to think that at last.
I don't know when you commented that, but I just said, what kind of adventure takes place in a cardboard box?
The kind that involves coarse salt and severed ears.
Or a guy called Snake.
Snake. Well, occasionally Raiden ends up in the box.
Yeah. But usually Snake.
Okay.
So
yeah, he puts a sombrero on.
Yeah. So, do you want to do the yellow face while we're here today and actually read some more for next week?
Yeah, because we've only been going just over an hour, so an hour 10 we've been going, and we have done a couple of asides since then. And the yellow face is a story where, in all honesty, we can probably skip over a lot of it because it's sort of describing houses and stuff.
Why? I knew it. I
it's a
knew
short-
Seb was going to make the joke. He said, "Why is Dan doing yellow face? Is he going undercover?" We are going to make you a Japanese. That was a reference
this is the
to
point.
You Only Live Twice.
Yeah. Now, this would be the point where if it was near enough anyone other than Seb, I could go, well, my mum grew up in Hong Kong. So it could then sort of be going, oh dear, no. No, she was born in Africa, just to make the thing even more confusing.
Yeah.
There are occasional times where that is a fun pair of facts I can pull out to really make people uncomfortable with just sort of, oh dear. They're sort of, oh dear. And it seems like I'm being called out for my casual racism.
He says, an actual plot point in Twin Peaks. There are two characters who disguise themselves as other people. It happens twice in the same season. One is a villain. Why would anyone feel uncomfortable about your mum being born in Africa? He asks.
Yeah, no, it's just sort of like on the same line of people who have not seen me and are assuming by my voice that I am, because of course my face has not been on any of our streams.
Yeah, I was going to mention
people-
this has yet to have occurred.
Yeah, so people just have my voice, and if they just assume that I am white, but then and then they make a half casual comment on sort of like they're racist. Well, my mum's from Africa. And I go, oh dear. It's like the fact is, I am white, yes, but it is a point where I can just sort of go, just sort of make people reflect on it by pointing out that my mum's from Africa, or she's from Hong Kong. She was not in South Africa. She was the middle child of a pair of missionaries. There's no connection. She just happened to be born there, spent the first few months of her life, and then grew up in Hong Kong. Yeah, it is occasionally useful to have that to pull out to just also as like random family trivia. It's just like, oh yeah, my mum was born in a country that doesn't exist anymore. It's now part of what is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which of course has democratic in the name of it, so it is definitely not democratic.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a helpful fact to get people to reflect sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, the Adventure of the Yellow Face.
New story of the week.
Yes, my mum was actually born in Africa. She was born in Africa and grew up in Hong Kong. I am not making any of that up.
I
And it's
believe
also probably giving up. No, it's just because Seb is confused. I mean that Seb's default position is confused or hyperfixated.
I mean, that's my default position too, to be fair.
God, yeah.
Mood.
I add in some. I add lacking sleep into that combination for myself.
Yeah. Me too.
Fuse
usually.
hyperfixated, big sleep. Yeah, but
Frequently
it's also,
all three.
Probably give. Yeah, it's God, it is hellish, isn't it? But yeah, I'm probably putting out a bit too much information about some of my family on these streams, but it's also all information I've already said to the two viewers who join us on these streams.
Yeah. Also, you didn't name any
Yeah.
names.
Yeah, but we start this one where Watson is commenting that he normally brings out talks about the cases that show off Sherlock's abilities to the greatest extent, but this time he is showing us one where, while the answer was the truth was still discovered, even though Sherlock was actually wrong about what was going on, and there is half a dozen of these such cases, is and he has decided that he is going to give us the most interesting one, or the strongest features of interest, as it refers to it, because language has changed somewhat. I show you the case of the strongest features of interest. Don't you mean the one that's most interesting? Shut up, you. I prefer my way of speaking. Pipe
So,
in mouth.
so someone has left their hat and pipe, I believe, in 221B Baker Street, waiting for Sherlock Holmes. Sorry?
Yeah, they've left a pipe behind, but the reason why Sherlock and Watson were not there to greet this man who has spent about half an hour waiting for them and was soon to return was because Watson somehow managed to persuade Sherlock to go outside to do exercise for exercise's sake. And then Sherlock responds like any person who hates doing exercise when he gets back. See, this is why I do not do exercise. We've missed upon a case. We've missed the chance of a case.
Yeah.
But the man does come back because he did leave a pipe and he does want Sherlock's help. And Sherlock deduces some information about the man, including his handedness, that he valued the pipe greatly because he spent more to repair it twice than it would cost to buy a new pipe, and this isn't exactly the cheapest one to begin with, and it cost more to buy a new one of these he spent repairing it. And stuff like that. Again, just showing off to remind the reader that yes, he is smart.
Yeah.
But
and he deduces, air quotes, the man's name, and he goes, "You know my name?" And it's like, if you wish to preserve your incognito, maybe don't leave your hat with your name in it at the scene.
yeah. Yeah.
So this
The man also doesn't appear to have slept in a couple of nights.
he's worried about his wife, who he knows is being dishonest with him, though he knows not what about or why.
Yeah. He hadn't left the hat at the scene. When he comes in, his hat is off, but he's got it facing, so the inside is pointing towards Sherlock.
Oh,
and he just
yeah, no.
spotted the name and has read
Yeah, no, I got a bit confused there. He left the pipe, he had the hat.
Yes, not to be confused with the Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle, in which the hat was the foremost part of deducing anything about the man in question.
Yeah.
And yes, but the man is in such a state because he and his wife, who I desperately trying to find the name of quickly, Effie.
Yeah.
Effie. Yeah, I was thinking it was going to be another Mary. We've had about 6 of them in
Has anyone
what
here
would be
lost
15
a
stories?
Mary?
Yes. In Ireland, rows of hands shot up. Some of them lost a couple of Marys on the way over. People are always losing Marys in Ireland. Whenever you sit down too fast, the Marys roll out of your pockets and fall between the cushions of the sofa.
That was a Dar O'Brien quote.
Yeah, Dar O'Brien, please don't sue.
We very much enjoy your
Go
work.
watch go watch the full sketch. It's on his YouTube channel, so this is glorious. Yeah, he's having a go at a psychic.
Yeah.
So,
Dar O'Brien, not Sherlock Holmes, although I'm pretty sure he would.
Yeah, we haven't yet had the Sherlock Holmes having a go at a psychic story. I'll be honest, I'd be surprised if the subject of psychics didn't appear at some point. Actually, no, it wouldn't, because I think Arthur Conan Doyle was a great believer in psychics.
Ah.
I'm going to double check that. Doyle. Apparently, he wrote a collection called The Supernatural Tales of or there's a book called The Supernatural Tales of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Yeah, it is Arthur Conan Doyle. So it's quite possible he was a great believer in. But then again, there are plenty of people who wrote ghost stories who don't believe in ghosts.
Yeah. But if he is a great believer in psychics, he's hardly likely to write Sherlock Holmes concisely explaining why they are, well, frauds, basically. Or if there are, it's to, he's going to have a go at them for, there are people who are genuinely psychic who you are giving a bad name.
Yeah. Yeah, but the visitor, whose name I have just forgotten, is here because he has been married for 3 years to Effie. His
Grant Monroe.
Yes, Grant Monroe is married. His wife Effie. They've been married for 3 years, and Effie, despite his protestations, signed over her property to him because she was married before him and indeed had a child, but they're both dead, and he has seen the death certificate of the husband. And I want to say yellow fever or something like that. She'd married in America as well, in Atlanta. This Helbron. Yes, it was yellow fever. Nasty illness, that, from everything I've heard about it.
Yeah.
And she had returned. She had returned to England after the loss of her husband and child, and within 6 months had met at Grant Monroe, and they were married not too long afterwards, and they retired. He's relatively well off. He is a hop merchant, so I imagine hops, beer.
Yeah.
He sells ingredients for beer. Always a good industry, I think.
Yeah. One of the few evergreen industries that exist, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say nowadays a good industry to actually be into that might actually rival the alcohol industry on sort of as reliability is to be in the toilet roll industry.
Yeah.
Because if you learned anything from the last pandemic, people want toilet roll. That may be the only thing some people learned from the last pandemic.
Yeah, in some cases. So one day, Effie comes to Grant and asks for £100, but doesn't say what for. Now, I'll remind you that £100 in the 19th century is quite a lot of money. Do I still have that inflation calculator?
Yeah. It's revealed that he said if ever she would need money for anything, she has but to ask, and this was the first time she's done it. She playfully, when he asks, doesn't. She playfully sort of goes, "But I thought you promised that you wouldn't ask any questions," and he sort of dutifully pays her the money. And he just assumes it is for some form, like a new dress or something.
What year did we say? Did we usually go for?
This we go for 1890 thereabouts, because that was when collection was sort of written.
1890. Okay, so £100 in 1890. £11,076.03.
Yeah, I'd say if you spent that much on a dress, That's quite the dress.
Yeah.
You must be going to the gala, probably.
I should
As one of the
say
less
so.
fashionable ones, probably.
Heh.
Yeah, well, given that Marilyn Monroe's dress has gone to it, and that's worth a substantial amount more, it's probably you're reporting for the news at the Met Gala rather
Yeah.
than one of the people actually invited. But yes, they're living in a country estate in Norbury for a house where there's an inn and two houses a little further away from them, and then there's a small cottage on the side of the field that faces them. And there was no one there. And in the meantime, not too long after Effie asked for this money, he suddenly there are residents at the cottage. And they Grant goes over to offer the help to see if they need any help and find out what sort of folks live there. Because, well, they're their neighbours, and that is the country and gentlemanly thing to do. So,
Effie
but when he
really
looked
does
up,
not
he
want
saw a
him to do this.
Sorry, what was that?
Effie really does not want him to do this.
Yeah, this is before Effie knows that the people have moved in, and he's first looking, and there is a face he sees in the window that where is it? I don't know what there was about that face, Mr. Holmes, but it seemed to send a chill right down my back. I was a little way off, so that I could not make out the features. There was something unnatural and inhuman about the face. That was the impression I had, and I moved quickly forward to get a nearer view of the person who was watching me. But as I did so, the face suddenly disappeared, so suddenly that it seemed to me to have been plucked away into the darkness of the room.
Huh.
He describes it as a vivid chalky white, with something set and rigid about it that was shockingly unnatural. So he decides to knock at the door and try and work out some more, and he's greeted by a tall, gaunt woman with a harsh, forbidding face
And
a northern accent.
What may you be wanting?
I am your neighbour over yonder. I see that you've only just moved in, so I thought that if I could be of any help to you in any...
I will just ask you when we want you, said she, and shut the door in my face. Annoyed at the churlish rebuff, I turned my back and walked out. Although, he is quite disturbed at the, he was quite disturbed at the vision of the yellow face in the window.
Despite the fact he describes it as being vivid white, this is the eponymous yellow face.
Yeah.
It is a confusing thing. He remarked to Effie, they were getting ready for bed, that the cottage was now occupied. And he goes on to say that normally he is a sound sleeper, but because of the how it had sort of made him uncomfortable, he's sort of tossing and turning a bit, and he's sort of half awake. And he sees that his wife, in the middle of the night, has got dressed and actually leaves the house, or certainly leaves the room in her mantle and her bonnet. So definitely suggestive of leaving the house. It's like putting on your coat and you're grabbing your umbrella, essentially.
Yeah.
And when she came back at some point later, and he murmured some words of sort of half-sleep words, and she was shocked that he was awake because he has a bit of there's a jest in his family that nothing could ever wake him during the night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the Effie was only gone for about 20 minutes, and this was around 3 in the morning. And she is shocked that. And she passed it off as she was just by the door to get some fresh air, because it was overheating. But he can tell that Effie is lying.
Yeah.
And his suspicions start to worm and doubts are going in his head. But
He remarks that all the time
yeah.
she told him the story, she never looked at him.
Yeah.
And she apparently has a different voice when she lies, which he is not used to hearing.
Yeah. Yes, he was meant to go to the city that day for work, but he doesn't. He wanders and he comes back a bit later, and he's on his way back. He stops and has a look at the house again, see if he can catch the face again in the window. But to his surprise, the front door opens and out walks Effie. He is struck dumb with astonishment.
Yeah.
And she is horrified when she sees him.
Yeah. But then tries to play it.
She
tries to play his off. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. She's just sort of like, she tries to play it off as I was just there to see if they needed any help. Oh, please don't be angry. He had again. So this is where you went during the night. Indeed. You came here, I'm sure of it. Who are these people that you visit them at such an hour?
And she tries to keep up the pretense. It's like, you can't keep bullshitting after you've been caught in a lie. That's against the rules.
Yeah.
Obviously, those aren't the words that are used.
Yeah. Yeah, and he sort of makes an agreement of she's not going to tell him this, but he will continue to trust her on one condition, that she does not come back here again. And she agrees to it, and they go back to the cottage. And he stays another 2 days at home, and the wife abides by the agreement.
Yeah, but she's very specific in that if he forces his way into that cottage, all is over between them. So whatever this secret is, it is her belief that their relationship wouldn't survive it. And there are only a few things that could be.
On the third day, however, she provides ample evidence that that her promise was not enough to hold her back from this secret influence, he calls it. Because he arrives back early from town, having gone in finally. He arrives back 50 minutes early. The maid has a startled look at her face and he comes in and he asks, "Where is my wife?" And she's like, "I think she has gone for a walk." And he gets instantly suspicious.
And then he sees out of the window that person running towards the cottage. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he quickly searches the house to make sure his wife isn't actually present. Or indeed anyone else.
Yeah. Obviously, he catches her at it, and she's like, "I'm sorry, but if you knew all the circumstances, you'd forgive me." And he's like, "So tell me then." and she won't.
He barges into the cottage, but there is no one there. There's a black cat in the basket. There's a kettle whistling on the stove/fire, but no one else is in there. But there is, strangely, on the mantelpiece, a copy of a full-length photograph of Effie, which he had requested done 3 months earlier. And then they after this and after Effie sort of does the thing and refuses to tell, the day after he suddenly realizes, hang on, there was a man in London who can advise me. He was a great solver of mysteries, and that is what has brought Grant to Sherlock.
Now, Sherlock's assumption is that the woman's first husband, thought to be deceased, is in the cottage.
Yes, and
of course, Watson has already established that this is incorrect.
Yes, so they make their way back to Norbury, and they make their way back to Norbury, and Sherlock and Watson join them, and the theory, and this is Sherlock's logic. How else can we explain her frenzied anxiety that her second one should not enter it? The facts, as I read them, are something like this. The woman was married in America. Her husband developed some hateful qualities, or shall we say that he contracted some loathsome disease and became a leper or an imbecile. She flies from it at last, returns to England, changes her name, and starts her life, as she thinks, afresh. She has been married 3 years and believes that her position is quite secure, having shown her husband the death certificate of some man whose name she has assumed, when suddenly her whereabouts is discovered by her first husband, or, we may suppose, by some unscrupulous woman who has attached herself to the invalid. They write to the wife and threaten to come and expose her. She asks for £100 and endeavours to buy them off. They come in spite of it. And when the husband mentions casually to the wife that there are newcomers in the cottage, she knows in some way that they are her pursuers. She waits until her husband is asleep, and then she rushes down to endeavour to persuade them to leave her in peace. Having no success, she goes again next morning, and the husband meets her. And as he has told us, as she comes out, she promises him to not go there again, but 2 days afterwards, the hope of getting rid of those dreadful neighbours was too strong for her, and she made another attempt, taking down with her a photograph which had probably been demanded from her. In the midst of this interview, the maid rushed in to say that the master has come home on the wife, knowing that he would come straight down to the cottage, hurries the inmates out the back of the house into the grove of fir trees, probably, which was mentioned as standing there. In this way, he found the place deserted. I shall be very much surprised, however, it is still so when he recounts it this evening. So what do you think of my theory? And Watson's like, no, it seems right.
As Sherlock's theories generally do.
Well, it is all surmise, but at least it covers all the facts. When new facts come to our knowledge, which cannot be covered by it, it will be time enough to reconsider it. You know nothing more until we've had message from our friend at Norbury. So they're waiting for basically the message to say, now is the time to storm the house. By God, for England, Harry, and St. George.
Yeah.
Yes, arm in arm as they burst in the door, and two of them get clobbered by the door frame. No, not quite. They're not that. Grant is saying, as hard as it basically says before they go in, as hard as this may be. Sorry, my microphone fell. He basically surmises, as hard as this may be, a truth is better than an infinite doubt.
Yeah.
out. And yeah, and they also surmise that, of course, legally we are putting ourselves infinitely in the wrong because they are planning of breaking and entering.
Yeah. And, well, probably a bunch of other stuff on the cards as well.
Yeah, but as they approach at night, there is a line of yellow light coming from one of the things, and Grant's like, "There is the creature. You can see for yourself that someone is there. Follow me now, and we shall soon know all."
The creature. It's still
Yeah,
weird to...
yeah, and as they approach, they are greeted by Effie, who is begging Jack not to go in. And she's begging, "Trust me again, and you will never have cause to regret it." And he's like, "I have trusted you too long, Effie. Leave go of me. I must pass you. My friends and I are to settle this matter once and forever." And they push into it, and Grant enters the room where you saw the face, and the others follow closely at his heel. Well, it was a cozy, furnished apartment with candles and table on a mantelpiece. And in the corner, stooping over a desk, there sat what appeared to be a little girl, her face turned away as they entered, in a red dress with long white gloves on. And Watson gives a cry of surprise and horror when the girl turns, and the face was of the strangest livid tint, and the features were completely devoid of any expression. And then Holmes lets out a laugh as he's figured it out. And he goes over and passes his hand behind the child's ear and peels the mask off.
Yep.
To reveal a black girl.
Yes.
Or
That
yes.
is the big twist of this story.
Yeah. And she is amused by everyone's amazed face. Watson bursts out laughing.
Basically because the child does.
Yeah, contagious laughter, or as they put it, out of sympathy with her merriment. Which, okay, that one I think I'd prefer to contagious laughter, because contagious laughter sounds like there's something wrong to me.
Yeah.
Grant Monroe is basically... my image of him is he's got his hand to his throat, as the text said, but his mouth is opening and closing like a guppy fish, as he just tries to process what's going on. Because it's not what he expected, and it's certainly not what Sherlock expected. And he goes, "My God, what can be the meaning of this?" And Effie sweeps in, and I will tell you the meaning of it. It's with a sweeping into the room with a proud, set face, like a good Victorian woman wants to do in any story, especially a Gothic one. Just sweeping into the room with a proud, noble visage on their face.
Yeah.
Face at night. It's missing the lightning and the rain, and this would be a Gothic horror novel all of a sudden. And
but the little girl is her child from her first husband, who survived and has been hidden here because she didn't think that her husband would want to care for her.
Yeah, her daughter didn't come with her to England initially because she was too weak. She was still suffering with the after effects of the yellow fever. And the woman who's looking after her here is the one who looked after her in America. And she sent word that her daughter was well enough to travel, and Effie, having missed her greatly, and knowing that the property at the end was empty, organised for her daughter to come down so she could see her. Her father, her first husband did die, and she has a locket round her neck, which gra- uh, uh, which her husband thinks doesn't open. She opens it to reveal a picture of her first husband, who is, unsurprisingly, a black man, and given their daughter.
Yeah.
And she said that her daughter took more after her father than her, as such is the case in these pairings. Means which, yes, that is true. It is more likely to have a dark-skinned child in these situations. And yeah, and yeah, she didn't regret doing the husband, her first husband, and she didn't regret the daughter. And yeah, and then she fell in love, and she feared it to share the fact she had a daughter because she feared that she would lose her second husband, especially considering that at this time there is probably still an ungodly amount of racism going around Britain.
Well, there is now, so back then there definitely would have been.
Yeah, but it would have been viewed as more acceptable, but still bad.
Yeah.
And she was finally she got the chance to see her daughter. She had the overwhelming desire, and her daughter could travel, so she asked for this. And but she gave instructions that basically for her daughter to wear gloves and a mask to make sure that none of her skin was showing, because the talk about town of a black girl suddenly being about would be not good and would potentially cause problems and put her daughter in danger.
Yeah.
And potentially put her and her husband in danger as well. Well,
I do like the ending, though.
yeah, but yeah, and the reason she went in the middle of the night is she was frankly too excited, and she wanted to see her daughter.
Yeah,
Like,
which is
can you blame
understandable.
It's been literal years, and it's her daughter.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, it's been nearly 4 years at this point between when she last saw her daughter and her daughter arrived. So yeah, you can't blame her.
No.
And she was still scared, even though she knows her husband is a good man, and she was still scared because, well, as it said, she had to abandon others of her race to marry him and her first husband, and she didn't regret it a single bit. But attitudes like that, very hard to know that someone you think is a good person might suddenly have those attitudes, especially in that time and still present today.
Yeah. And I'll just read out the ending as it exists, because I don't know what I could say. It was like, she, and now I ask you, what is to become of us, my child and me? She clasped her hands and waited for an answer. It was a long 10 minutes before Grant Munro broke the silence, and when his answer came, it was one of which I love to think. He lifted the little child, kissed her, and then, still carrying her, he held out his hand to his wife and turned towards the door. "We can talk it over more comfortably at home," said he. "I'm not a very good man, Effie, but I like to think I'm a better one than you've given me credit for being." which is just a brilliant way of wording that. And he goes, "Holmes and I followed them down the lane, and my friend plucked at my sleeve as we came out. I think," said he, "that we shall be of more use in London than in Norbury." Not another word did he say and of the case until late that night, when he was turning away with his lighted candle for his bedroom. "Watson," said he, if it should ever strike you that I'm getting a little overconfident in my powers, or giving less pains to a case than it deserves, kindly whisper Norbury in my ear, and I shall be infinitely obliged to you. And that's how it ends.
Yeah, it is a good moment of yay, happy families, and also a moment of Sherlock getting a taste of what he dishes to Scotland Yard a bit.
Yeah.
A bit of humility.
Yeah. And he asks Watson to remind him of this if he ever thinks he needs it. And there's also it's also just a nice moment where the guy says, "Okay, I know I'm not a great guy, but you know, I'm not that bad."
Yeah, but given the time, it is a justified fear.
Yeah.
Especially what she probably went through in America, having to essentially, you go, well, yes, well, essentially being cast out by a large number of people there
Yeah.
because she married for love, which is enough to get people cast out as it is in some places. But she married across race lines for love,
Yeah.
in which. Yeah, so I'm just checking something.
So what did you think of that story in general?
I enjoyed the story. It was it's probably I think the shortest one that we've done so far.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it turned out to be a complete non-issue, which you'd think would be anticlimactic, but it somehow wasn't. It was nice at the end.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just doing some maths. Ooh, that would have been bad actually. The story roughly takes place 25-ish years after the abolition of slavery in America, so there would have been a lot of tension when she got married. Still.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so I think frankly she was right to be fearful of a reaction because she'd probably had already endured some pretty horrendous ones as it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
But,
I mean, the fact that the guy said, "I'm not a very good man, but I think I'm a better one than you've given me credit for being,"
Yeah.
it at least does speak to a good attitude on his part. if not,
Yeah.
on the part of society as a whole at the time.
Yeah, there's a bit of recrimination towards her for why didn't you trust me? But to be fair, what he had been through for the last 5 days was quite stressful.
Yeah.
And he was probably fearing much worse, like either a husband who's still alive, or some form of blackmailer, or something along those lines.
Or an affair.
Or someone, or a potential adulterer situation. But no, it was she was scared for the safety of her child. Which, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah. Though, admittedly, if it had been an affair, you've got to be bold as brass to move the person you're having an affair with to essentially the end of your garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
The
probably
carnage.
unlikely.
Yeah. And it was also unlikely Arthur Conan Doyle would write 2 affair-based stories in a row.
Yeah.
Especially as this one was not removed from the memoirs initially.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those stories where it's sort of like it's good to see that Sherlock is human to an extent. Like he picks up on the cue of we're not needed here, time to go, and it makes it seem like Watson had essentially lost it to, I want to be nosy. I want to see the end of this. And Sherlock's going, no, improper. Time to go home.
We have done our job.
Yeah. And
Uh,
then, and also as I say, the moment of humility where he has to be, if I am not of the proper, if I am not doing the job or I have got a bit too confident in my powers, please remind me I can be wrong.
yeah. Remind me of this case where I was entirely wrong.
Yeah. And then, yes, and yeah, it's good to see, and also sort of like it's one that actually has a heartwarming ending, because a lot of the ones we have where murder isn't involved, the ending isn't particularly heartwarming in some ways.
Yeah.
Because we've got one of the Vanishing Groom.
Yeah.
That was a heartwarming. Sherlock is prepared to beat a man with a riding crop.
uh,
A deserved situation. The one where the one with the governess that's hired for the psychopath's son, the one where they've essentially locked their daughter in the attic. Has a
yeah.
mixed ending. One daughter escapes and looks like they're having a good life and indeed has got married. The man is still there and the son is probably still growing up to be a psychopath and stuff like that, or to be a sociopath, so it's to be worrying
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Whereas this one, there isn't sort of the bitter taste afterwards. Yes, there is possibly going to be some gossiping and society and local society readjust to it.
But you do
To
get the
fact
sense
yeah,
that everything's broadly everything's going to be okay.
yeah. And also, given that he is making a reasonable amount, if Norbury does not prove safe, it is within their it seems to be within like their means to move to a safer area.
Yeah.
Though, given the abolition of slavery happened earlier in the UK, or within the empire, because technically it only was only technically abolished within the UK in 2006. Something ridiculously recent.
You what?
Yeah, no, slavery within the empire and stuff was banned relatively early, but it was never recognized as a state of being within like England. As like that there could be a person, essentially local people like the English or the stuff weren't recognized as being able to be enslaved. So technically, slavery was banned by the Labour government under Tony Blair or Gordon Brown. It's sort of one of those historical cleanup laws that needed to be done. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah, I imagine so.
it wasn't like in practice you could keep a slave. It was sort of on paper there is ways that you could argue you'd have the right. We sort of need to close that up.
Yeah. So, right, we're getting up to the 2 hour point now, so there's that's probably a good place to wrap up. Next week, well, for next week, we'll be reading The Stockbroker's Clerk, The Adventure of the Stockbroker's Clerk, The Adventure of the Glorious Scot, and at least I think that's what it said, and The Adventure of the Musgrave Ritual. I got no idea what a Musgrave Ritual is or might be.
Musgrave, I believe, is a place, and the ritual is sort of like the Satanists in Musgrave, sort of thing. It's
They might just be trying to summon the Black Luster Soldier.
Oh, they're using the wrong ritual spell. Yes, but Yes, but that was the Adventure of the Cardboard Box and the Adventure of the Yellow Face.
Yeah. We hope you enjoyed this Tome Raider. We will be back next week with the other three, and hopefully we'll discuss them a little more concisely than it would take to actually read the thing.
Read them. Yeah, in which we have taken slightly longer, but there have been asides, tangents, and the occasional odd bit of historical peculiarity. Like, huh.
And we'll do it
But
again.
anyway. Oh God, yes.
That sounded a lot more threatening than I meant it to, and we will do it again.
Yeah, but if you wish to see us before next week, we will be on Sunday for Assassin Sunday,
Where we will be
where
continuing.
we are playing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Where we will be playing / continuing in Middle Earth Shadow of War, because that is the only way to say war when orcs are involved,
Yes.
according to Warhammer. And we found it slightly amusing to add that.
Yeah.
It will be our third session, and we have recently acquired the ring. Finally, we can go army building.
And
or not.
yeah. The day before that, for Solo Saturday, I will be starting a Sonic run on the Ollie Johnson Plays YouTube channel and twitch.tv/Ollie Johnson. I do want to do more book stuff, though.
Yeah. Ollie will be rolling around at the speed of sound on Solo Saturday.
Allegedly, yes, but that song doesn't come until Sonic Adventure 2.
Yes, but it is also the song most people know.
Yeah.
And, including me, and I was at I was at the concert with you.
Yep. Dan came to a con with me which featured a Johnny Joeli / Crush 40 concert. He didn't play Escape from the City, but then the DJ immediately before him had played the song.
Yeah, I believe that's because they put it onto that sort of like the warm-up set. It's like everyone expects it, but I don't necessarily want to sing it. It's like the music you get when you're expecting an act to come on. They probably decide what's going to be in that, so there's no crossover with what they're going to be performing.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening. We will see you for those things, but also, don't forget this next Tuesday, 6 nights from tonight, to roll on over to twitch.tv/eclectichawk for our D&D campaign.
Except it's not actually on this Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, the following Tuesday.
2 weeks on
Yeah, no need to plug that, but I will be playing a Minotaur Pro Wrestler, and I did a version of the infamous Steiner Math promo this week.
Yeah, and I am normally playing a fishing spear, but the fishing spear has been kidnapped and is being taken to be sold into slavery. So I believe I'm playing a pirate captain.
It'll be okay. We're going to get you back.
Yes. And no, I will not give more context onto what the hell I mean by a kidnapped fishing spear.
If you want more context, you're going to have to tune in to twitch.tv/eclectichawk 2 weeks from yesterday.
Oh, yes. So in 13 days.
Yeah.
And Ollie will also be returning on Monday and Tuesday next week with Mafia Monday and Tonbury Tuesday, both with Murasaka Pit.
Murasaki's Pit, yes. And that is a Yakuza / Like a Dragon and Final Fantasy series run respectively on the Ollie Johnson Plays YouTube channel. And this Twitch channel.
Yakuza 5. Yakuza 5.
No, it's Yakuza 6 at the moment, and we're nearly done. But I have recently discovered the spearfishing minigame that I kind of want to finish because I missed it entirely in my initial playthrough.
Yeah. So you found Ryoshi. Where has he been kidnapped to?
Well,
is it Camarocho?
Well, he's a harpoon gun these days.
Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, but has he got to Camarocho?
Hiroshima.
Hiroshima.
Yeah. Hiroshima.
Yeah, and then And then it's still Yakuza 6, not Yakuza 6, Final
It's
Fantasy
still
6.
Final Fantasy VI, although we are nearing the end, and I'm grinding out spells and teaching everyone Ultima with the Paladin Shield, which I ground out the curse on. So there'll be at least one more Final Fantasy VI stream, maybe two, depending on how grind heavy we are. And then we'll start 7, the one that people want to see.
Yeah. And then what's the Yakuza game after 6? Is that
well,
Like a Dragon?
I wanted to do the Judgment games, which are a spin-off that came out. Well, the first one came out after that, but Murrah doesn't want to do those. So, I bought the PS5 version of Judgment just for it, but never mind. Yeah, but I'll come back to that. So the next Yakuza game when we finish 6 will be Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is the first of the turn-based ones, and the first mainline Yakuza game since 2, I think, or maybe in the first one, to get an official English dub.
Yes. With Matt Mercer, isn't it, in there?
I think Matt Mercer plays Majima in that one. I'll have to check up on that one. There were a couple of changeovers after that game. But I do think it is Matt Mercer. Anyway, I've been rambling on the outro for 6 minutes.
Yeah, we have we've taken on next week with Ollie Johnson.
Yeah. That is what I'll be doing for the next week. Hope to see you there. Thanks so much for listening to Tome Raider. If you have suggestions for books you'd like us to read and discuss, drop them in the comments, please. We've had some suggestions from Murrah for Resident Evil novels, which should be fun if nothing else. Although, I keep saying once we get on to actual novels, we'll have to find sort of a format for how we discuss them.
Yeah.
Because they're a lot longer than these stories.
Yeah, I get the feeling we may have to break them down into like thirds of the book-long chunks based upon chapter number, and then go from there.
Maybe.
But we will work that out when it comes time, when we actually get to it.
Alright, so, thanks for watching. We will see you next time. Good night, everybody.